Everyone, welcome into the Basketball Podcast of Mid-America. Today is Thursday, February 8th, and the Arkansas basketball team is 2-7 in SEC play, most recently losing big at LSU. The Razorbacks are officially off to their worst start in conference play since the second season of John Pelphrey in 2008-09, when they started 1-8 and finished 2-14 in league play. The good news, Arkansas will definitely have at least 2 wins this year, so they can't have less than that year under Pelphrey. But the bad news, the SEC schedule is now 18 games, so they could potentially have more losses than that year. The even worse news, this season just simply did not pan out how anyone thought it would. And barring an absurd run in the SEC tournament, the Razorbacks will not be dancing in 2024. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Ethan Westerman, happy to be joined by Bob Holt of the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette here next to me, and across from me, Anthony Christensen of WholeHogSports.com. And then, as always, we have Blake Sutton there in the back running the board for the show. But like I said, Bob, this just hasn't been the year that anybody expected. You wrote last night a really good piece about really just breaking down that preseason AP poll, how everyone was high on the Hogs, and yourself included. Bob is a voter, but y'all all got it wrong, Bob.
Yeah, very, very wrong. I'll point out the coaches also were wrong, so it's not just us dumb writers, it's also the coaches. Both I don't know if the coaches just followed what the writers did, but both preseason polls had Arkansas number 14, and then when Arkansas lost at home to UNC Greensboro, they dropped to 20th, and then they went to the Bahamas and played some really good teams. We went 1-2 out there, losing to Carolina, North Carolina, and I guess we say Carolina, we got to include South Carolina now. They're good too. So lost to North Carolina and Memphis, went double OT to beat Stanford, and they haven't been ranked since. And obviously, as you helped correct me on in the net yesterday, and maybe it's changed today, they were 129. So
they had ascended 2 spots yesterday from number 131.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And they didn't even play. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they heard Devo was back. So, hey, let's move them up 2 spots. I don't know. But, yeah, it's basically been a disaster of a season. A train wreck, a dumpster fire, or whatever, motif you want to use. It's been bad.
Yeah, and, kind of explain to us, I mean, you talked to a lot of the voters who, joined you in voting that preseason. What made everybody – I mean, Arkansas lost – some really great pieces. 4 guys that have played in the NBA this season were on that roster last year. So I guess, there were somewhat of red flags there, but, everybody still felt confident in the Hogs. Why is that?
I think, and the short answer is Eric Musselman's track record. He's going into his 9th year as a college head coach, the previous 8 years at Nevada and Arkansas. He'd always won at least 20 games. There was no tournament in 2020 because of COVID. And, Arkansas would have had to have won probably 1, maybe 2 more SEC tournament games to have a shot to get in there as a bubble team. But the last 6 times they've had a tournament, Eric Musselman's had a team there in 2 Elite Eights and 2 Sweet 16s. And he's done that largely by utilizing the transfer portal. Last year, obviously, Anthony Black was a freshman signee, Nick Smith, Jordan Walsh, all NBA draft picks. But, primarily, you go to the Martin twins in Nevada, and then guys like Ricky Council last year, like Justin Smith. You can go on and on. J.D. Note, name a lot of guys. He's really excelled in signing guys, getting guys from the portal and then meshing them together as a team. And so I think everybody thought, well, he's done it the last 8 years. Why wouldn't he do it in year number 9? It just hadn't worked out. Maybe these players were overrated by the media and, the coaches. Maybe they just haven't meshed together for whatever reason. I think, not to throw anybody in the bus, but Trevor Brazile, he was a first-team all-conference pick. I think, coming off knee surgery, we all thought he'd have a great year. He had 19 points, 11 rebounds against Duke. We haven't seen that guy in a while, and he's, been out with knee soreness. Devo Davis, just back with the team now, but he's had a rough year. Caleb Battle in and out of the lineup. He scored 25 points in one game and 21 in 4 others, and he's had games where he didn't play. One game he didn't play at all against A&M, and they won, and he didn't play the second half of it against LSU. And you've had, Keon Menefield scored 32 in one game, didn't play in another. It's just been really erratic rotation, and I get Eric's trying to push every button he can, but Yeah, I think everybody believed that Eric Musselman's track record and thought they had added pretty good talent. But there's really nobody on this team. Like I said, they have 4 guys from last year's team that have played at least some in the NBA this year as rookies. I don't think there's anybody on this team you expect to be in the NBA next season. Trem Brazil has a lot of upside, and he might get drafted and have a shot. But but basically, this team just has nowhere. What we're seeing, I think, and what we have to accept is that this team has nowhere near the talent last year's team did.
Yeah, and there's one thing I know about this team this year. It's the moment you think you might have something figured out about them, you really don't. It's an up and down thing, and this past week was just another example of that. Anthony, you've only been here a short amount of time, and we joked last week. That the Hogs were 1-0 in the Anthony era here on the beat because they had that win at Missouri. They're now 1-1 though, so that broke your perfect little record, and it was not necessarily a pretty way to end the record. I think LSU was up 28 late. It was a 21-point margin at the end of it, and I think that was kind considering how that game went. LSU was up 28 late, and then Arkansas scored 7 in a row. In the final minute, they got their 7 points from stealing it from the LSU walk-ons is what it looked like while they're just trying to hold the ball to run the clock out. So 21 points was maybe kind. That was not a close game. What were some of your takeaways from that beatdown, man?
Yeah, no, so that would have been LSU's largest win over Arkansas ever if Tremont Mark didn't get that steal there at the end. Get my names mixed up. I'm new. Please forgive me. But yeah, the turnovers are obviously killer. LSU 19 points off turnovers. And just it kind of goes back to the offensive efficiency that I wrote about against Missouri because it was a lot better than what it had been. And then against LSU, it just was not good. 24-55 from the field is not necessarily a very great number. 3 of 13 from the three-point line, it's not good. 23 of 33 from the free throw line, not ideal. And then, like I mentioned, obviously the turnovers. 12 turnovers isn't an astronomical amount, but when you're giving up 19 points on 12 turnovers, it's not great. So I think I look at offensively, it's just they look kind of lost at times, I think, and I know I wrote my game story about the defense and how they can't guard a dribble drive or they can't guard the 3-point line. Will Baker obviously went crazy in that game. I think they were a little underappreciated. I was tweeting some Will Baker puns like Wilt Chamberlain Baker or Will LeBron James Baker. I thought they were funny, but he was ridiculous. 9 of 11 from the field. Just nobody really picking up on him, especially there in the first half, and that's kind of what got the scoreline kind of building, and there was just really no coming back from that.
Yeah, Bob. Whenever Bob writes, game previews always, and you're always doing the box score or the projected lineups and everything, looking at their stats. Did you see a Will Baker game like that coming from just looking at his season? Was that just out of the blue?
No, I think he was averaging just over 11 points. In SEC play, he'd been 2 of 10 on threes. I think maybe he was 9 of 30 on the season. Now, he did score 29 on Mississippi Valley State in the opener, and hopefully nobody will ever confuse Arkansas with Mississippi Valley State, all due respect to Mississippi Valley State. But no, and he was a guy that originally, I think, had gone to Texas and played at Nevada, and he's a solid player. He's a 7-footer. But, yeah, when you've hit 2 3-pointers in 7 SEC games, you got to remember they played one fewer than Arkansas going into that game. They were 3 and 4. And then you hit 3 in about a 2-minute span in the first half. I think he did some pick and pop stuff, and Arkansas just didn't get out on him. And then he hit. I think he was feeling good, and they were, Michael Williams, their freshman, hit some threes. I just think they started getting a lot of confidence, and I'm sure Arkansas was kind of going, well, here we go again. Even if they were trying not to do that, it's hard not to do that when you've gotten hammered a lot. And, yeah, Baker ends up 9 of 11, 4 of 5. Eric was reciting the stats saying, well, that's hard to do alone in the gym. You think about a guy who's just out there, shooting by himself after practice or before practice, hitting four out of 5 threes is not easy to do unless you're, Steph Curry or something. And he just killed them. That was, Eric speculated that was a career high, and that was a good thought. He actually, like I say, had scored 29 against Mississippi Valley State. It's probably a record for mentions for Mississippi Valley State on this podcast. And then when he was at Nevada last year, he scored 28 against New Mexico, which is a good team, but that was double overtime. So I don't know how much he scored in double overtime, but that was the most he'd scored in an SEC game this year, by far. And you just couldn't picture that happening. But Arkansas just didn't get out on him, and he got hot and was feeling good, and just kept. That basket gets pretty big when you got a big lead and you're at home, and you just kind of feeling no pain out there doing heat check stuff. And he just, that really sums up the game to me as a big guy averaging shooting 20% on 3-pointers, hits 4 out of 5, shoots 80%, and just basically destroys Arkansas in the first half. Scores 17 points. The first half was essentially the game. The game's over. LSU's game, set, match.
Yep. Anthony, you got something?
I do, yes. I don't know if I should raise my hand more often, or I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was funny. But if I remember correctly, there were a lot of shooting fouls as well that Arkansas kind of committed. Obviously, you hold Jordan Wright to one field goal in the whole game. That's probably a good sign as opposed to getting blown out. But the big thing that you look at when you look at Jordan Wright's numbers from that game, he still finished with 13 points because he got to the free throw line 11 times. So a lot of shooting fouls, a lot of stuff like that, and I think that's something that I should have mentioned earlier, but that's a big thing that I kind of noticed, especially when you look at kind of trends throughout the season.
Yeah, I'm about to say we've talked about this a lot of times on this podcast this year. Arkansas has struggled just not fouling all year. I don't even know where they stack up now. It's like they were so low that I was like, oh, it's not even worth checking this anymore. You just know they're going to be down here for a while, but yeah, for sure they struggle at times of just defending without fouling. Before we go to a break, I want to ask y'all real quick. Aside from the Razorbacks clunker of a game, that at least got out of the way pretty early. It was an 11 a.m. tip-off, so, had our little brunch hour beat down. Did any of you guys get to enjoy what otherwise was just an awesome slate of college hoops?
Oh, man. We mentioned it last episode, man. I'm a hoop head. I spent the whole rest of the day just watching basketball, which is, that's my ideal. That's chef's kiss. That Indiana State Drake game, oh my goodness.
You mean to tell me why we were watching Kentucky, Tennessee, you were watching Drake, Indiana State?
Hey, multiple screens, my friend.
Okay. You do get a pass
multiple screens, but I'm going to preach this to the mountaintops. The Missouri Valley should be a multi-bid league this year. Drake and Indiana State should both be in. But that day it was just, you had, I think that was the same day Duke Carolina was going on. It's just so many good games that day. It was
game of the day happened in Waco, Texas. If anybody saw that finish, I'm not even gonna spoil to y'all what happened. Just go back and watch the last 2 minutes of that game and enjoy it. It just bask in how good of a finish that game was. Bob, you get any other hoops games in on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm an SEC guy, so I watched Kentucky, Tennessee. Obviously, very impressed with Tennessee. Really, scoring 103, I think it was. We all know Kentucky's not a defensive dynamo, but they can get up and score. But that was a really good win for Tennessee, and it was interesting because both teams were coming in off losses. Which is pretty rare. South Carolina had gone to Knoxville and won, and I'm trying to remember who Kentucky lost to. They lost to somebody, not Arkansas. And they took care of business against Vandy this week with a big game. I thought they might score 150 points there for a while the way they were going, but that was a high level game. Alabama, Auburn. Auburn really took it to Alabama in the second half last night. That was a good game. You think about the Iron Bowl, but that's become a really good basketball rivalry. But, yeah, Saturday was fun. Yeah, if the Hogs were going to lay an egg, man, do it early, get it out of the way, and, like I say, we can enjoy hoops the rest of the day, watch some good basketball.
Rest of that. an almost divine Saturday of basketball,
Yeah.
man. That was just, and that Iowa State Baylor game, oh my goodness.
By the way, Bob, I think Kentucky's lost that you were referencing. I think they lost to Florida.
That's right.
In
It's weird.
overtime.
They beat Florida in Gainesville and lost to them in Rupp, which is just. But it's like LSU won at A&M, and then A&M won at LSU. Sometimes college basketball just doesn't make sense.
We'll talk more about SEC predictions later on, but just a little teaser. I think Kentucky, if they don't learn how to defend, is really they got a long road ahead. But we're going to cut to a break now, and when we come back, we'll have another edition of Stump the Bob. So hang tight. You don't want to go anywhere.
Get the latest breaking news on all Arkansas Razorback sports at WholeHogSports.com. Our award-winning reporters and photographers go beyond game recaps to bring our subscribers the most trusted Razorbacks news anywhere. With expert analysis, the latest in recruiting, plus unique and compelling stories of your favorite teams. Subscribe today at WholeHogSports.com.
All right, welcome back into the basketball podcast of Mid-America. We are back with Stump the Bob. No pressure, Bob, but if I'm not just wrong on this, you are 0-2 right now, so it's time to step it up. It's time to make your run to get a bid to the knowledge big dance or whatever. I think last week I said we know that a turnaround is in store for you. It starts today, though, so no pressure.
The knowledge big dance. I love it.
All right, Bob. So, like Ethan said, you're 0-2, but today's trivia question is worth 3 points. So you could go positive if you get this one right. Arkansas has been to 6 Final Fours in their history. What year was their first Final Four?
Let's say 1944.
Oh, so close. I'll give you a hint. World War II.
Okay, well, World War II was during 1944, so.
I know.
Are we talking about
when it started?
when the Germans invaded Poland, or when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, or could you give me a?
When the U.S. entered the war.
Okay, that would be 19. Well, it was 1941, I guess.
That's correct.
Okay.
1941.
There we go.
I think we need to give Bob. That was you were so close that we almost don't need to count a loss, but we aren't giving you a win. You know what I mean? Like let's just call it. This didn't exist.
We can't give him the win, but I can give him like a side point that he can use later in the season to get positive.
Okay.
Just put that away for a rainy day or something.
But it was interesting. So back then, that was actually Arkansas's first NCAA tournament, but back then there was only 8 teams. So to make the Final Four, you just had to win one game.
They were already in the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
Everything started.
And it's funny, Arkansas counts 1941 as an Elite Eight appearance, which is, I mean, it's a little strange, but Arkansas. Go ahead.
I'll ask you guys, who won the very first NCAA tournament?
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't have that information in front of me. But in this one, in 1941, Arkansas's first Final Four, Wisconsin beat Washington State in the national championship, and Washington State is who beat Arkansas in the Final Four. But the top scorer in the tournament was Johnny Adams from Arkansas. In 2 games, he averaged 24 points a game, which was kind of interesting to me that he averaged 24 points a game, because if you look at the final score in the national championship, it was Wisconsin 39 and Washington State 34 in the final, which was pretty strange to have such a low scoring final, but it was the 40s.
No shot clock. They probably didn't use peach baskets, but we're not talking about shot clock. No 3-pointers. A lot of passing, but
yeah.
The first national title. What year?
I think it was 39.
Can I get another hint? I want to try this.
West Coast team.
Oh, UCLA.
Oh, was it was it San Francisco?
No.
Think farther north.
Washington.
Think farther south.
Stanford.
Oregon.
Oregon, yes.
Wow. Now that's a good piece of trivia.
I'm going to
give you,
stuff. Right.
Bob, for for that little nugget, I'm going to give you an extra side point.
Okay, that's good.
Later down the road.
Bob.
So you are 0-2, but you have 2 side points that you can use later.
And remember those. Save those for a
Oh, I
rainy day.
will, yeah.
For a rainy day, all right?
It's like Phone a Friend or whatever on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Is that show still on in syndication or something? Or?
It's probably on the game show channel, right? That's
so-
a thing, I think.
Well, regardless, this was a stronger showing from Bob today because he showed he was on the right like 44, 41. I mean, come on now. That's so close together. We're dealing with how many years ago is that, guys? We're dealing with like 80 years ago. So I'll give it to you. That was nice. Back to talking about this year's Razorbacks. We might talk about the 1941 basketball season again sometime soon, but we'll fast forward to 2024. The big news of the week, guys, Devo Davis is back with the team. We don't know why he stepped away. We aren't here to speculate why he stepped away. All we know is he missed 3 games, and now he's back. So, Bob, you listened to Eric Musselman's radio show, and you heard him break the news on it. Just what did Eric say then?
Yeah, he basically said he was back with the team, that they'd had a very, paraphrasing, they'd had a really good meeting on Sunday in his office. Eric's office. I don't think Devo has an office. Maybe he does at home. Has a home office. And then Eric said they went and lifted weights together. So I guess that's a good, seal the deal thing. You're coming back now. Let's go pump some iron. And then the team was off Sunday, but my guess is there are probably some guys shooting around. But he said Devo went into the gym and got some shots up, and then he had a good practice Monday. He said he tweaked his ankle a little bit, and some other guys did. He didn't name who they were, but he said that happens sometimes when you have a long physical practice, and he hoped everybody would be ready for Saturday. But, yeah, I think with several days for the next game, they probably got after it pretty good in practice. If they had a game Tuesday or Wednesday, they probably would not have scrimmaged. They'd have wanted to make sure everybody stayed healthy. But, yeah, I didn't expect that news. He doesn't normally break news like that on his radio show, but it got everybody scrambling, I think. And but he's just on the brief radio reference, he sounded very upbeat and excited about having Devo back. Said he was excited, thought Devo was excited to be back, thought the team was excited to have him back. So we'll see how it plays out.
Well, talking about going at it in practice, there are many things that I think the average fan would say they hope that they're going hard in practice to try and improve. And at the forefront really might be the three-point defense. Bob, you, as Bob always does, you really broke it down well in a story, how even when games Arkansas has won, the three-point defense hasn't always been great this year.
Well, yeah, the Aggies who can't hit the broadside of a barn, they shoot 29% on threes or something, and they start off that game 1 for 15, and they still almost won. But Wade Taylor had a monster game, 41 points. Arkansas had blown a 20-point lead, and then he split 2 defenders, kind of lean in, hits a 3 to give A&M their only lead, 77-76 with 7-something seconds left, and you're thinking they're going to lose this game on a freaking three-pointer. And then, thankfully for Arkansas and the fans and everybody's sanity, Tremont Mark hit a great shot, and they won in the end. But, yeah, out of 9 SEC opponents, 7 of them shot the 3 better percentage-wise against Arkansas than their season average. And, Missouri, 2 of them were pretty, Missouri shoots 30%. They shot 50%. LSU's been a good three-point shooting team. They shot 37% on the season. They shot 52-something against Arkansas. South Carolina, I think, was shooting 26% in their first 4 SEC games. They shot 50% against Arkansas. So it's like if your three-point shooting is ailing, come to play the Razorbacks because they'll get you going again. And so it's just, I think the frustrating thing for Eric is they haven't defended the 3 well at all, which has been a trademark of their team. His very first team, which was small, they held opponents to 27% three-point shooting, which led the nation. And I don't think opponents have shot better than 33% against them in any other season. Well, in SEC play, opponents are shooting 39% against ours, over 39%. I mean, they're almost better off just taking threes all the time,
Yeah, I might just go out there and see how my shot starts looking.
But yeah, they haven't defended the 3. They haven't defended the dribble drive. They can't seem to. Eric says he thinks maybe guys are, are a little hesitant to get out to the three-point line because they're worried about a guy's going to drive by them. But I'm thinking, say, look, either get out there and guard them or stop the dribble drive, but you can't give up both. But that's been, I mean, you could look through any Eric post-game transcript and almost inevitably you'll find a quote to the effect of, we haven't guarded three all year long. Insert name of person who asked the question. And so it's just been an ongoing situation, has not gotten better. Maybe the guys just don't have the quickness and the lateral moves. Maybe they don't have the length to defend the three as well as past teams have. And Eric also talked about this on his radio show that in the past, obviously they had talented young players like Jordan Walsh, Anthony Black. Ricky Council wasn't young, but he was a junior. And these are guys, but especially the freshmen, Jordan Walsh, really good defensive player. They hadn't developed bad habits. They really seem to pick up on Arkansas's defensive concepts. And he says sometimes it can be, maybe tougher for older guys to break some habits and start doing what the Arkansas coaches want them to do. So I think some of these guys just had trouble picking up on what they need to do, and some of them maybe just don't have the physical abilities to do what would help.
Well, speaking of shooting the three, Georgia, I mean, they're not known for it, but they are capable three-point shooters. They have some on the team for sure. That's who Arkansas has next. Anthony, Bob, you can both bounce off each other of what you know about the Bulldogs. I know, Anthony, you said that there's one player on their team that you kind of, you got to cover a little bit third hand, right?
I did, yes. R.J. Sunahara, he's one of my favorite players in all of Division I basketball because last year when I was living in Evansville, I got to cover the Division II National Championship game. He was playing for Nova Southeastern, and, I mean, he was just a weapon. I mean, that guy couldn't miss. Kind of led his team to, one of the most exciting games I've ever watched in person, honestly. Won the national title, undefeated season for Nova Southeastern. Now, obviously, at Georgia, he's a guy who can score in all three levels. Hasn't played. He's kind of been inconsistent in his minutes since he made the jump up to Georgia. Obviously, Division II, even national championship level Division II to the SEC. That's a huge jump, but he's still been, a productive guy, a good guy to have on the team for sure. He's a ton of fun to watch when he gets going, and he's kind of in his own. And before the show, we mentioned Jabri Abdur-Rahim, mentioning three-point defense. He's somebody who can hit the three, shooting almost 39% from three this season. So talking about defending the three, he's obviously going to be somebody who they're going to have to keep their eyes on, Arkansas, that is. But yeah, R.J. Sunahara, just kind of personally loved watching him play at the Division II National Championship. So when I saw him go Division I, let alone SEC, I was very excited. And then obviously Abdur-Rahim is he's a lot of fun to watch. Him, R.J. Melendez. Georgia's got a lot of weapons. Don't let the 4-game losing streak kind of fool you. Blue Kane can hit threes. He's a good freshman they have. They got a lot of guys who can hurt you. Obviously, they took it to Alabama before Alabama eventually came back in that game. But I think they had like a 17-point lead at one point, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a team that has a lot of weapons. Obviously, Arkansas already knows that, having gone down to Athens and lost. But yeah, it should be. There's a lot of challenges. I'm kind of rambling at this point. So Bob, you take the mic from me.
Bob, you got a final thought on Georgia?
Well, the good news for Arkansas is that Georgia, along with A&M, were one of two SEC teams to shoot three-pointers worse against Arkansas than their season average. I think the Bulldogs shoot about, at least before last night, they were shooting 36% from threes, which is very good. They had 9 out of 27 against Arkansas. Those of you math majors know that would be 33.3%. 0.3, repeating. But yeah, and they did a good job. Abdur-Rahim, he was one of 6, but Justice Hill and Noah Thomas, I think, were both 3 of 5 or 3 of 6. So those were two guys. It's like Eric says, you want to stop the quote star, but you can't let the supporting guys, have big games. You got to try to guard everybody. So yeah, that was a game that. Arkansas they got down big, and then they got within 3. They had a shot to win, so I really think here in Walton Arena with a full week to get ready, with Georgia playing their second road game after a late game at Starkville, I really think it sets up well for Arkansas on paper. But obviously, we know they don't play the game on paper, right? They play it on that hardwood court. But I think it's important for Arkansas to get off to a good start, keep the fans engaged. I'll be curious to see what kind of crowd it is. I mean, you kind of wonder where the fans' heads are at this point. We know the game's sold out, but are people going to actually, come up from Fort Smith or Little Rock or Russellville, or, will they drive down from Bentonville? I don't know. It's an SEC game. It's a Saturday. It's the Razorbacks, so we'll see. But obviously this team's struggling, but it's definitely I think it's a game Arkansas should win. Doesn't mean they're going to, because there's some other games I thought they should win or at least be more competitive in, and it didn't work out that way.
Well, I said earlier in the show we're going to do a little bit of SEC prediction. We're going to go fast with this. We're 9 games into the SEC schedule. It's 18, so we're halfway through. Give me who you think is going to win, and maybe a challenger, but why you don't think the challenger is going to ultimately win. I'm going to start us off. We'll go me, Bob, Anthony, and wrap it up with Blake. I'm going to say I like Tennessee. I've liked Tennessee all year. I think that's probably the safe answer right now is Tennessee. I love Kentucky offensively, but that defense, I watched that game Saturday. It is really hard to watch a lot of times. Tennessee, it was kind of on par for Kentucky to score a lot of points against Tennessee, but Tennessee's a much better defensive team than probably that game indicated. So I like the Vols to win. Kentucky is my next challenger, Bob.
Well, just so I don't glom onto what you did, never thought I'd be saying this. I don't think South Carolina, they've already got probably the best win in the league at Tennessee. They beat Kentucky at home. They seem to be playing with a lot of confidence. Honestly, they remind me of some of Eric's Arkansas teams in that they really are good defensively. They never seem to give up, over 65 points. So anytime you're playing good defense, you're going to give yourselves a shot. The fact they came here and won with Michie Johnson, their big scorer, not having a good game. I think they've had some big wins where he didn't score. Eric said on his radio show they thought Talon Cooper, their point guard, who they got from Minnesota, was the MVP of the league. Now I would say Dalton Connect would probably be hard not to pick him. But I'm sure when Arkansas plays Tennessee next week, Dalton Connect will be the MVP of the league. But I'll go with South Carolina.
It's interesting because Rick Barnes, I think, actually said the same thing about Talon Cooper after they got beat by him. Anthony?
Oh, there's so many teams that could win. I'm happy you said South Carolina because I do want to say Lamont Paris, Coach of the Year, and I don't think it's much a debate. Picked last in the league, now currently in first place. I mean, what he's done, this season especially, has just been remarkable. That being said, I do kind of find it hard to look past Tennessee. You look at what Dalton Connect has kind of done since he's come in. He's just almost unstoppable. There's so many teams that could challenge. I think Auburn's somebody you have to look out for. Alabama obviously can win some games. Kentucky, you mentioned the defense, not exactly stellar. But you've got, 5 teams separated by 1 game right now? Yeah. The top of the league is loaded. I'll say South Carolina is probably my challenger. But I could see them kind of dropping the road game to Auburn, maybe dropping the return game against Tennessee, and maybe having a hiccup against a Florida or a Texas A&M or an Ole Miss, just because those are obviously very capable teams. But I'm gonna lean like an inch over towards Tennessee.
So we've got 2 Tennessee. Bob gave us South Carolina. Blake, wrap us up. Who's your SEC favorite?
I'm gonna go with South Carolina as well. What a Cinderella story, picked last in the SEC, and now they're sitting at the top of the SEC. They're 20-3 overall, 8-2 in conference, pretty nuts. And I think my backup's going to be Auburn. Auburn looks really good. I looked up last night, and they were up by 20 against Alabama, and Alabama's really good too. So,
all right, there you have it. We have a split between the Vols and the Gamecocks, so surely we'll be right. But until next week, as for Ethan Westerman, Bob Holt, Anthony Christensen, and Blake Sutton, thanks for listening to another episode of the Basketball Podcast of Mid-America.